Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of the Shift with CJ podcast. Today's podcast is special because in the Biohacking studio, I have a very special guest from really far. My guest on the show today is a board certified holistic health practitioner. And to be honest, that title doesn't define him because he goes over and above that. As you guys must have known that we've had the World Biohacking Conference here or the World Biohack Summit here in Dubai. And I invited my guest, who's here sitting next to me on the show, and he gave a fantastic presentation. So, this podcast is us going into detail about that presentation. So, let me introduce you. Everyone, put your hands together for Jason. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm super excited as well. And it's funny because I was curating most of the people for the World Biohack Summit. And one of our common friends, Yasmin, tells me, you need to check this guy out. He lives all the way in Canada. I'm like, oh man, Canada. So does that mean we have to fly him over here? He's like, he is going to set the stage on fire. And you sure did. So, Jason, firstly, and we've hung out quite a lot, and surprisingly for the people who are listening, me and Jason are quite similar in terms of biohacking, in terms of thinking. And yeah, I want to know from you really quick, how did you get into the world of holistic health, biohacking, health optimization, all of that stuff? Tell us your story.
Yeah, so story started, typical teenager. I was a skinny teenager. Got bullied for being skinny. Wanted to put on weight, wanted to be respected, and top athletes, anyone who was bigger in size was respected. And I did that for my teens, my early 20s. It drove me into bodybuilding. I was a personal trainer at the time, and seemingly the more bodybuilding competitions I won, the more muscle I put on, respected by clients, people wanted to work with me, and it kind of snowballed from there. And that basically took me to 22, 23, and I started having some gut issues. I started having some gut pain. I started having a little bit of like diarrhea. At the same point in time, like my mental health wasn't in the best spot. I didn't consider, it's so funny, like when you're in it, you wouldn't consider yourself depressed or like anxious, and you really need to like step outside of it and like, view it from the outside. But at the time, I didn't think I was. And so, that was like 2 years or so of kind of going through those symptoms. And I started diving into a little bit more of what was going on with my gut. And I stumbled upon functional medicine. And at the time, I didn't have 2000 Canadian to do like a one-time test to figure out what was going on with my gut. All my blood work was fine. The medical system said, you're clinically depressed. Here's an antidepressant, and away you go. And around that time, I was kind of learning about the gut brain axis. Dave Asprey was talking about gut health, talking about the microbiome. So I kind of started diving deeper into that. My prior education in the strength and conditioning world was Charles Poliquin. So I'm a Poliquin coach. That was my first education. And alongside Poliquin, I studied under Paul Chek, and I did his holistic lifestyle coaching. I'm a Chek practitioner level 3. Like I went through those courses. And so from the age of 18, I started learning from Paul in the sense of like, we're an energy body and a physical body. We have chakras, and just all of like that and everything in between. And a lot of the energetic side of Paul Chek's teaching didn't really resonate with me because I didn't ignore it. It just didn't resonate fully for me because I wasn't at that point in my life yet. And so I went back to Paul's teachings to figure out what was going on. And he talked a lot about fungus and parasites and stuff like that in the
Mhm.
gut. And I started learning more about microbiology and depression and how it's tied to the gut. Let's fast forward. I basically learned about the gut brain axis. I learned about the chakras. I knew that our self worth, our self confidence, our solar plexus chakra is tied to what's happening in
Mhm.
the gut. And that was a big emotional void that I had for a long time. And so I started diving into that. And around that time, I met a lady who was using a machine called a bioscan. And the bioscan, we did a food sensitivity test. And I had done a food sensitivity test via blood and hair before. And I followed the recommendations, but it didn't really make a big change in how I was feeling. it was this food sensitivity test. It told me I was intolerant to 50 things: chicken, asparagus, like anything green, lettuce, sweet peppers, bell peppers, like pretty much my entire bodybuilding diet I was intolerant
Yeah, I was
to.
gonna say like it doesn't work too well on a bodybuilding diet.
No, pretty much everything I was intolerant to. And it was once I took those things out, I actually felt better. I was like, oh my gosh, finally something that gives me information that actually created results for me.
Mhm.
And then I started going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, well, how do you heal your food insensitivities? So I went to see a nutritionist, and he's like, okay, probiotics, glutamine, digestive enzymes, do that for 6 to 8 weeks and you'll be fine. Did that. 8 weeks later, exact same, right? I was intolerant to avocados for 2 years.
Oh my god.
2 years. My favorite. Why? And of course, I was stressed. I ate them every single day, not the organic. So pesticides on top of that.
Mhm.
And of course, I was having issues. So then I started doing my own research on like, how do you heal leaky gut? It's not just taking digestive enzymes and glutamine. Like it was a step deeper. First, I had to identify what was creating the leaky gut. Well, I knew I was stressed out. Well, I came to learn I was stressed out. And so I started working more on the mental, emotional aspect of things. And at the same time, I learned that a lot of my symptoms were fungal related, candida or
Mhm.
mold in the gut. Now, at the same time, I also learned that, so sidestep, anywhere you have water or moisture, you'll get mold
Mhm.
eventually, right? So what I learned is I had a lot of damp, stagnant energy in my system, and that was creating this fungal infection in my gut. Now, at the same time, as I mentioned, I was a bodybuilder and I smoked. So
Mhm.
heavy metals and chemical residues in my body. I had this toxic load in my body that obviously was not getting out. And so Mother Nature brought in its cleanup crew. It brought in the fungi, brought in the mold and the candida to try to clean up this mess. And the rest is history, basically. But that was essentially the journey. I when I really figured that out, I then started doing liver gallbladder flushes. I started cleaning up the heavy metals and the chemical residues. And as I started doing those things, I started to notice my health start to improve. And these are all philosophies that we talked about at the biohacking conference, the biohacking World Biohack Summit, as a framework, because it took me 3, 4, 5 years, probably 4 years, of like bits and pieces and like trying different things until eventually studying at Quantum University, the framework was given to me in the sense of like, we have to assess all of these parts. And since 2018, when I met BioEnergetics, the company that I now use, where we learned about something called healing for the patterns of life, there's a system and framework that we follow when working with clients. And I've worked with over 1,600 people in the last 5 years.
That is fascinating because your journey, I mean, it's safe to say that you were like on the road to disaster, none of the things are working for you. You're getting information, distributed information one by one. And sometimes you have to get information in bits and pieces for your mind to be able to understand. And now you're at a stage that you can help so many people. But what is interesting to me is that even with functional medicine, a lot of people don't go in this deep rabbit hole of connecting. And you were lucky enough to, study with some of the legends, Charles Poliquin, Paul Chek. Tell us now, seeing what you've already, you've had work with so many clients, and you say there is this whole framework. Let's start there. What's the framework like?
Yeah. So we'll start at the bottom, right?
Mhm.
There's a model called the downward causation model. It's not my model. It's something I learned from Amit Goswami. He's a quantum physicist and he's a professor at Quantum University, where I learned this specific framework. And at the very bottom of this framework, and I use bottom because we're kind of thinking like a waterfall effect here. We are a physical body, right?
Mhm.
We are a physical body. We're a physical being, and in that physical body, I break it up into two sections. We have a biomechanical body, right? Muscles, bones, tendons, physio, chiro, the trainers, that entire world,
Mhm.
right? And then we have the systemic body. The systemic body are our organ systems, right? Then we go into like the whole medical world, and like, to a degree, right?
Mhm.
We have the naturopaths, homeopaths. We have that whole world. Then above the physical body, we have what's called the vital body. Okay, and the vital body is our emotional body, and those are the chakras, right? We have 7 chakras, and each of those chakras, based on Joe Dispenza's work, and many before him are energy centers that correlate to different emotions. And each emotion happens to be correlated where there's a nerve plexus. So, for example, for me, the solar plexus is tied to our digestive organs and all those digestive juices. Our sacral plexus is tied to our gonads, reproductive. So, when people have a resounding emotion, whether it's self worth or shame and guilt or fear or communication issues, it it comes out of our vital field and downloads into that nerve plexus, which then creates hormonal imbalances there. The step above that, so the question is, why would someone, be riddled with shame and guilt or
Hmm.
self-worth issues? Well, then we go into the mental body, and the mental body is the conscious and subconscious mind. And we know that our subconscious is programmed by the time we're 10 years old. And so if we're parented in a way that is like, we're shamed for what we do, or there's a lot of trauma that happens and we're stuck in a fear state, then that can create these emotional patterns for our entire life if we never really work on it. The step above that is now the spiritual body. Now, some people call that religion, other people call that like consciousness, but there is this higher singularity point that comes down from the ether essentially as like a focal point, and then comes down in this like triangle format and encompasses who we are. That is the downward causation model. That is the framework. So when I work with clients, maybe we just start with exercise, diet, some detox strategies or drainage strategies, and some remedies. And if the needle starts to move and then get stuck, well, that means the answer is no longer in the physical body anymore.
Hmm.
So then we have to go a step up. Then we start looking at the emotional bodies and the mental body. Sometimes it's transgenerational, right? Sometimes we have soul contracts that we're here to learn, right? People talk about past life regressions. Like it goes pretty far,
Yep.
but you got to start somewhere. And so most people start with the physical body and they stay with the physical body. They never go beyond that. And I feel like if we're relating this back to biohacking, that is the best biohack. The best biohack is having the framework of understanding how our being, how this is a meat suit. This is a meat suit holding our energetic and spiritual bodies,
Hmm.
and it is downloaded into the physical form. So when the physical form is having issues and it's not being solved by physical things, we need to go beyond that.
It's nice. It's nice to have like this holistic viewpoint of the human biology, and because most of the doctors or physical practitioners, they're stuck into the physical body, and this is why a lot of people, they get so many issues and they're not able to solve it. There are ancient cultures who have been talking about similar things, like according to the yogic traditions, we say that there is something called the anandamaya kosha, or let's start from the beginning. So at the very bottom, there is Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha, and Vigyanmaya Kosha, translating to our food body, our, because everything that we collect from this planet, like we're, even I think of it this way, our time on this planet is super limited, right? And the thing is, we're only grabbing whatever, all of us are, is an accumulation of whatever has been grown up in the planet. So a lot of the things, they become topsoiled and then become foods, and then we eat it, and then we don't have super long lives because plastic lives longer than us. We are that's more, we're more biodegradable.
Then
So
plastic.
yeah, so our time on this planet is less. So everything that we are, it depends on what kind of food we eat, and that becomes the human body. Then comes the mental body, which is manomaya kosha, which means that, like you said, sometimes this is the physical, then there is mental, and this mental has emotional stuff. Then we take it a step further and we have the prana, or the energetic body, and then we have the ethereal body, and then we have the bliss body. So the yogic traditions and like some of the other traditions have been very clear, and now it's nice to see that science is actually tapping into this and looking at this. um, also I like this downward causation model. Tell us, what is soul contract?
Yeah, soul contract. So there are certain beliefs outside of religion and more into spirituality that, we have a soul, and that soul has a contract that it is here to fulfill. And that soul picks your parents based on what they know of your parents and the lessons that your soul will learn through your life experience on this planet. And so some of us are old souls, some of us are newer souls. I'm sure we know someone who has like an older energy even though they're physically younger, for example. I feel like you and I are a little bit in that category.
I
um,
think so as well.
so we seemingly learn things very quickly in our life. You're 32.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be 31 this year. Very similar in a lot of ways. And so we've learned a lot of things very early in our life, seemingly that some people learn by the time they're in their late 40s or early 50s. And I've had my own traumas. I'm sure you've had your own
Mhm.
traumas, and those seemingly happened earlier or had a greater effect on us than other people. And I believe that our souls had a choice in that to some degree, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, why are we here doing what we're doing, right? It seems like you and I are both living through our soul contract or our soul mission to educate and help people in a way to live healthier, live longer, live more vital lives. And why else do we have this incessant need or drive to do that?
Yep. I also think that before we come onto this planet, maybe some of us, our souls are hanging around up there, and then we choose the adventure that we want to go to. And we're like, okay, let's get into this body, let's get into
Yeah.
this adventure. And surprisingly enough, I've been a part of a lot of ceremonies and I've been a part of a lot of like plant medicines. And I don't talk about this much, but one of the plant medicine journeys that I've had this. Um, can't remember the right word for it, but basically I was in touch with some other beings, and these beings were telling me that 98% of everything that happens on this planet doesn't happen by coincidence, and it's like we knew for thousands of years that you're going to be here. And I'm like, whoa, that's cool. And that gives a lot of people hope as well, because a lot of us are living life through the lens of frustration and disappointment and disbelief, and this then causes a lot of stress, right? You had stress in your early childhood, I had stress in my early childhood. And you're lucky enough to kind of understand, and now you're making other people's life easy. But also what happens is, most of the times we're just pushing it, we just keep pushing it, like with our physical bodies, with our mental bodies, with the stress, with our emotional bodies. And there's a very thin line between sanity and insanity. And most of us push ourselves towards insanity, and then we come back. We push ourselves and then we come back. And then all of the mental health, or like this mental health dilemma that's happening, is just us pushing ourselves towards the line of insanity and not coming back. So, when we even tell people like, hey, I'm really mad at you, and you cannot be mad at someone, you can just be yourself, and you're
Mhm.
just mad. So it's really interesting that now we're looking at other forms of therapies, or other we're looking at it from a different vantage point,
Yeah.
so we can see things more clearly. So if someone is listening to this show and maybe they have some gut issues, maybe they're not feeling great. Now there are some statistics that say that 1 in 4 people in 2050 will have some sort of a mental issue. 1 in 4 people, and 2050 isn't far.
I feel like that's a low stat, to be honest, because
Really?
I feel like 1 in 4 people already have things going on.
Wow,
It's
that's
2023, at least where I am, Canada and the States. It's like everybody's got anxiety or depression or like some mental health something, you know?
so. What do you, if you meet someone younger,
Yeah.
maybe like your younger self, and they're going through some mental, we wouldn't call it disease, but like some difficulty, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I think the key here, and I talked about this in my lecture, is every symptom, depression, anxiety, anger, frustration, whatever it is, or gut issues, every symptom is a healing mechanism by the body. Your body has its own vitality. Our soul has this consciousness, and we are here to live and thrive. And when we constantly make the wrong decisions, food, lifestyle, relationships, so on and so forth, those patterns repeat, which create insanity, as you mentioned. Side note to that, I feel like because our current society is so devoid of elder wisdom,
Mhm.
you went on some trips and you've learned of this, like, elder wisdom. And in modern society, we don't really have that, at least not in North America.
Yeah, we just push elders to shut up and not say anything.
We
Yeah.
drug them, and we put them in a home, or like we push them to the side.
Yeah.
So without that elder wisdom, there isn't these previous generations teaching us where the line of insanity is and how to come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what do we do now? We reach into that line of insanity, and then we just use medication to
Mm-hmm.
keep doing the same thing that got us there. And so, of course, there's no recoil because we're just drinking or medicating or excessive into exercise or plastic surgery or whatever it is to deal with that. So, to go back, if I'm speaking to someone younger than me, you know, I really want to teach them that what is happening to you right now is your body trying to tell you something is wrong, and you need to listen. And by listening, you got to listen to the whispers of the body before they turn into screams.
I like that.
Right? People don't do that, right? We ignore the whispers until they're screaming. And then once it's screaming, you want results now. You want results right away. It doesn't work like that. How many years did it take you to get there? So, you know, if you're in your younger years, shoot, even if you're in your older years, like first seek help. Find someone who you trust in any of the worlds we talked about, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Just find somebody. Start somewhere, right? Because if you're trying to do it on your own, you're trying to do all the research. Oh my gosh, I feel like you're just going to go in circles.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because you're doing too much of the hopping around.
It's like that fishbowl effect, like you mentioned in the beginning, right? If you're a fish, your world is just around that fishbowl, but like it needs an outside perspective that can come in and see the bigger picture and see, oh, here's what you're doing wrong. But most of the times when you're in bullshit, you cannot see it.
Right. So find help. Find help you trust. Find help that you're willing to trust and change with. I think that's the other thing. I've had clients before where like, yeah, I'll pay you, but like you don't trust me enough to like actually take the steps, because some people are so rigid and like, oh, I read this or I know this, or like you have to trust the process. The other part of it is knowing that if you're working with someone who focuses on just one of those areas, that is not the end all be all. And we need to you need to also start to explore other areas once you get a basic terrain. So if you're at the very bottom, like get to the gym, clean up your food, focus on sleep, do the basics, right? Once you're there, maybe start to do some meditating or like look at your breathing pattern, right? Do you actually breathe diaphragmatically, or are you just a chest breather amping up your nervous system, right?
Explain that to the audience for a second.
Yeah. So, breath. Deep breathing. That is not something that we do enough, right? There's a big movement as of recently with breath work, and you know you can really see it in the spiritual community. Like prayer is almost an opportunity to breathe, right? Yoga is an opportunity to breathe. These are all just opportunities to take a breath, and you can have a diaphragmatic rest and digest breath, which is like the yogic breathing. Like how do you bring your breath down into your belly? Then we have the fight or flight chest breather, right? If you're going to deadlift 300 pounds, right? Are you breathing nice and low, or are you breathing up in your chest? You're like amping yourself up to do this like heavy lift.
Because you have barrel receptors in the chest as well, and that activates that sort of a response.
It does. And it actually, it works with your blood pressure. Like it just activates that fight or flight go mode adrenaline response. Now, some people are so rooted into fight or flight that they're stuck there. Right? I have people on my table and I put their hand on their belly, my hand on top. I'm like, okay, let's just take a deep breath and try to get the belly button to rise and fall. And they struggle. Like they actually don't know how to do it. It's almost like they're spastic trying to get their belly breath there. And that's most people. Most people with neck pain, neck tension, you know, your scalenes are secondary breathing muscles. So the people with chronically tight necks, I'm like, okay, just take a breath for me. And you can see they're just doing this all day. No wonder you have a tight neck.
Yeah.
You're using this all day long. So my favorite type of breathing is called box breathing.
Okay. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah. So box breathing, think of literally a box, and you can pick a number. It can be 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. And all you're going to do is you're going to inhale for those 4 seconds. You're going to hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold it for 4 seconds. And you just repeat that. And so for my clients that are very much in their head, struggle to sleep, anything like that, I'm like, get a water bottle, get something heavy on your belly. If they can't, breathe like that normally, sometimes having weight creates this reflex of like moving it up and down. And I'm like, just breathe. And people will say within a couple minutes, they're now sleeping. They're just, how do you get the mind to slow? Because when you're thinking about breathing and counting, it's also hard to think about other stuff, right? Just because your focus is your attention is focused on that action. It's one of my favorites, right? And it's easy, it's cheap, costs no money.
Yeah, and another side note to that is like before this interview, I was doing an ice bath session, and once I jump into the ice, that is the breath work that I use, the box breathing, and also a lot of the Navy SEALs and Black Ops, they have been advised to use this sort of a breathing on battlefield because sometimes there is a lot of chaos happening, and to keep themselves centered in the middle of chaos, like Navy SEALs use these techniques, guys. So I think it can definitely work for all of us who are listening.
Mhm.
So Jason, today when you came in, you gave me, people who are listening, people who can see this on the screen and can see that I'm wearing a sort of a patch, like a sticker on my right temple. And if you, I mean, you guys won't be able to see, Jason has not just one, he can show one, but I think he's got like one,
I
two,
think there's
three, four,
five.
five,
Yeah.
five different patches of these. So what is this, Jason?
Yeah. So it's called amino neurofrequency.
Amino
Neurofrequency,
neurofrequency.
ANF.
Amino meaning amino acid.
Not quite amino acid. Just think
Okay.
of it as more of like a frequency medicine.
Mhm.
And these patches are made of carbon fiber, and they're imprinted or embedded with a frequency. And once on your skin, the heat of your skin activates these frequencies, and they're generally above certain nerve plexuses. And that information moves its way into the system. And it could be things like glutathione, NAD, and what they do is they activate or deactivate a certain system. So this shoulder in particular, I tore this lat partially 2 years ago. And ever since, it's just been gunky. It's always rolled in. It's kind of pulling in my neck. And yesterday, Renata here in town, a physio, put a bunch of patches on. And within 5 minutes, I could feel my whole shoulder just like dropping and letting go and draining.
How much of this was placebo? Or how much do you think of
Okay.
this?
Okay. So fair enough. I've known about ANF before.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
interested, cool, but not like super hyped up about it to the point that it could create a placebo.
Okay.
She was pushing around in a few areas. She's like, does that hurt? Does that hurt? I'm like, no, not really. Cause like I have enough muscle tissue that like, you have to push really hard for me to be in pain. So she's pushing on dense tissue. It doesn't really hurt at all. And I was like, what are you really gonna find? Because I've had a bunch of tissue work done on this area. I've had a lot of treatment done on it. And honestly, within like 10 minutes, it was letting go. And ANF frequency is a form of therapy, all medical grade. These are grade 1 medical devices. Like this is not consumer stuff. And people that are unfixable per se are seeing results with this kind of technology because it's just frequency medicine. It's working right at the level of the nervous system and it's being delivered through the fascial system. So in the work that I do, we can assess the bioterrain, we can assess the meridians, we can do things like functional medicine that look at stool samples, we can have people in the gym, we can do all the labs. What happens when all of those things don't work? What happens when all those things don't work anymore? We needed another technology. I didn't create it. I'm still new to the whole ANF thing, but I've been seeing the results that people are getting with this. The patches on our forehead. How does your brain feel right now?
Quite in the zone, but we also did have some bulletproof coffee with MCT oils, and I did
And
an
the
ice
ice bath.
bath, and I completely submerged my head inside so that
Okay.
the cold, once you hit the blood brain barrier,
Yeah.
most of the times, then you get this neural stimulation, which is
Mhm.
incredible. But of course, I don't want to think about the placebo side of things, but I do definitely feel much more in the zone. But that could also be because I'm sharing this space with you, and we connect in a different level. So
Totally. And
um,
it's all part of the equation, right? But
mhm,
specifically for the viewers listening, we have Gamma Brain on, and
okay,
this is basically like having. I mean, you just drank a bulletproof. I'm drinking a bulletproof. I'm sweating right now. It's like having 20 coffees. And so these guys, like, this is biohacking. You want to
Okay.
talk about the future of biohacking?
Yeah.
Like, this is the future of biohacking. And how do we use frequencies to invoke change in the body? I mean, you do it. Red light, it's a
Yep.
frequency.
So does this fall under frequency specific medicine or does it fall under bioenergetics?
This is more frequency specific medicine, but anything in the frequency realm falls under bioenergetics because you're working within the bioenergetics of the body.
Okay, cool. So how okay, I have this for people who are seeing this. This is just a patch and it's got a good kind of design hologram on it.
Yeah.
How do we how does someone embed a frequency on this? Does it happen through a device? Does it happen through codes? Does it happen through a healer? Like what's the mechanism of actually embedding the frequency?
That's a very good question, and unfortunately, not one I can answer
Okay.
because that's more of the patented information.
Okay.
But Mikel, he's based out of Spain, and he is the owner, creator, scientist of ANF specifically. I know there's a company in North America called LifeWave. It's like
Mhm.
a similar
Yep.
frequency medicine company, and I'm not sure how they do it. To be honest, I'm not sure if it's like imprinted with laser in terms of like shapes or
Mhm.
holograms. Like I'm not sure on that. Do you have any idea about that?
No, I'm not. I would love to find out, and people who are listening, if you guys know, then please put it in the show. I mean, just comment on the podcast, or just get in touch with me or Jason, and enlighten us. Although I know someone who's working with this for a very long time. His name is Dr. Ahmed. He owns a clinic here called Dynasty Clinic, and he's a fan of this. So I'm going to ask him.
I think I'm gonna have to connect you with Renata.
Mhm.
She's a physio here in town that works out of the Adri Clinic, and she teaches ANF here in Dubai. And I think she can give you more of that information in terms of like the real power of it.
You mentioned the meridians a while
Yes.
ago. So meridians is a more Chinese or Asian understanding of things. The way we look at things in the Indian culture or the yogic culture is we similar to meridians. We call something as nadis. So these are different sort of energetic waves, or let's say rivers of energy. We've got 7,200 on the left hand side, 7,200 on the right hand side, and we call it Pingali, Ida, and Shushumna, the ones on the center.
Yeah.
And the chakras, normally people say there are only 7 chakras, right?
Yes.
7 main chakras, but there are about 112. And every time these nadis cross a certain point, it creates a vortex of energy. And this vortex of energy is chakras. So looking at, and the Eastern philosophies have always known this. You can go to any yoga class and they're always going to be talking about chakras. I want to understand from you, from a science background and from a scientific perspective, how do you look at meridians? How do you measure them? How do you know if the meridians are not sort of flowing into the right direction?
Yeah, so you're right. Everything from your culture, I mean, they're all speaking the same thing, right? They're all speaking the same thing. They're really just talking about this energetic body. I feel like seven is a much easier number to work with, to
Yeah,
be honest. But when it comes to meridians being traditional Chinese medicine, it essentially speaks about how we have these energy transducers, so to speak, these like travel networks of tubes that you actually can't see. So let's take a step back. Meridians are accepted by the medical system, Western medical system, because they injected radioactive isotopes into where these meridians were supposed to be, according to the Chinese. And what they found is that these radioactive isotopes actually traveled around the body that they could see.
interesting.
But upon dissection, they couldn't find them. There's no, like, we have arteries, we have veins, we have lymph, but there was no tubes for the meridians. So the only reason it's accepted is because Western medicine's form of assessment validated it. That's the first step. Second step is that these meridians all connect to organs in the body. Now, through the downward causation model, whatever ends up within this meridian downloads energetic information into that, like, say, chakra, which then downloads itself into the organ. the actual physical organ. So I have a machine. There's many machines out there in the bioenergetic medicine space. Mine in particular, we use a copper pipe and a stylus to create a circuit, and the machine is measuring the voltage running through the meridian in your hands and your feet. So all meridians have endpoints
Interesting.
in the hands and feet. Now, take a step back. The difference between someone being alive and dead is electrical current.
Mhm.
So, if we're not measuring the electrical potential of the body, right, are we really measuring vitality of the body?
Like with a voltmeter or a voltage meter.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. So, when I'm measuring meridians, we can see if they're in a normal range, a stressed range, or a weakened range. Now, normal is where we want to be, stressed.
What stresses out meridians?
So let's say you've had a really busy 2 years and the business is booming and da 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 da. You're not sleeping as much. I have a 3 month old. The adrenals tend to get pushed a little bit harder. So when I test my adrenals, they might show that they're stressed because they're taking on more load than they should be, quote unquote. Right now, 2 years turns into 5 years, turns into 10 years. Now we go from stressed to weakened. Right? Think of the thyroid, normal, then it goes hyper, right? And then we know hyper doesn't last very long, and then it goes hypo, right? So there are certain organ systems that have more resilience for how long they can be in a stress state than others. So when you're in a stress state, usually it's acute, right? Okay, let's go back to the adrenals. I feel tired. I need more coffee, so on and so forth. If you're typical me, I'm like, okay, I need more sleep. I need some glandulars, all my biohacking tools, so on and so forth. Now, when you end up in the weakened state, that's when it's like you push on the gas pedal and there's nothing. You got a 25-year-old car and it just doesn't want to go anymore.
Mhm.
So those are the major differences, particularly when I see organ systems in weakened states. That's where disease is really showing. Now, so like large intestine, I see Crohn's or diverticulitis. Like I see these more medical grade conditions because the voltage, the energetic field of that meridian is kaput, and it's of course showing up in the organ system. So what we do after that, we have this framework of, okay, what do the meridians look like? Right now we have this energetic blueprint, so to speak, of what's happening in your body. Once we have that energetic blueprint, now we got to figure out, why is that energetic blueprint look like that? I probably had a conversation with you around mental emotional things, lifestyle things, so I got a general idea. But then, we are an ecosystem. So if we take functional medicine ideologies or philosophies and we bring it into the equation, what's going on in your body? Do we have fungi, parasites, bacterial infections, viral infections, mycoplasmas, heavy metals, chemical residues? Like, what's happening in the body? Now, great, they're in the body, and one idea or philosophy will be like, let's fight those things. Let's like just kill those things. There's parasites, you need a parasite cleanse.
That's what all the Western medicine is doing right now.
I don't even know about Western, but like the functional, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them, that's what they think. My brain goes, why is your energetic resonance attracting those parasites? Why is it that when you have 5 people in a house that's full of mold, only 2 people have issues and the other 3 don't? You understand?
Yeah, because when we talk about bacteria and viruses, our own gut or our own body is a colony of trillions of viruses and bacteria. And instead,
Already.
I like your point. Instead of asking this question, okay, let's just take an antibiotic or take something to kill everything off, we should be asking that question: if for millions of years we're being in harmony with these bacteria and virus, what has happened now that your body is not able to deal with it?
Mhm.
So they are around us, they're in the environment. What has happened right now? And you spoke about like the voltage. I have a question for you. How much of this do you think is because, like, you and me right now, we've got like 4 mics around us, we've got a wireless recorder, a computer screen, Wi-Fi in, and all of this is electricity, right?
Yeah.
So when we have excess of electricity which was never available in the biofield of nature, right? So this EMFs,
Mhm.
in short. I mean, we're kind of lucky because we have like 3 EMF mitigation
We have some
devices.
tools.
Yeah,
There's a grounding mat right here.
as well. So yeah, how does EMF like affect it? Because again, one of the primary mechanisms that EMF works by is that it acts on voltage gated calcium channels, right? And
Exactly.
then this is how it disturbs the homeostasis of the cell,
Mhm.
making it more prone to some of these diseases. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this goes into the work of Dr. Emoto. There's some new people that are doing research on water. Like we are primarily water,
Water, yeah.
right? From like a biology, chemistry. I mean, some people think blood, but we're made of water.
Yeah.
Now, water holds information, and we know this from Dr. Emoto's research. If you don't know it, go look at it because that's a
Yeah,
whole
YouTube
conversation
it,
on its own.
Dr. Emoto and its effects on water.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at emotions on rice fermentation in water, and it's all the same thing. So we know water holds emotion. We know water holds frequency, more particularly based on that emotion. And anything from a symbol to a drawing to a sound to me speaking into it, it holds it. Now, this relates to us in terms of our upbringing, how we talk to ourselves, what we listen to, and what's in our environment. Now, we can go from the perspective of, oh my gosh, there's EMF everywhere. I need to live in the woods or live in the desert or live in the mountains where there's none of
That's
this.
isn't that what you do? Because you live in the woods.
I did choose to live in the woods, but I moved to the woods particularly because COVID sucked in Toronto, and I was like,
Okay,
I just
got
need
it.
to get out of here. I was like, if I'm gonna live in the best place in Canada, it's gonna be in the mountains. So I did that. But I'm of the philosophy: how do we build up our resilience to be able to tolerate these things? Now, with the world we live in, you can't just go outside and ground all day, every day. Like it just doesn't work. That is the way that you should do it. That is the best way to discharge static electricity and to restructure ourselves. Sunlight, oceans, lakes, earth. Those are the ways to do it. If we can't do that, then we bring in things like harmonizers. We bring EMF shields for our phones and our laptops. We use grounding mats. Those are some of the tools that we need to use to create harmony in the body. Now, with my machine, I can test someone to see if they're sensitive or really hypersensitive. We're all sensitive to EMF. Don't get me wrong. If any of us live in the city and then go camping, we feel
Feel it.
amazing, right? You feel amazing. Now, that is not the same as someone who, like, they walk into a condo and they're like, oh my gosh, I have a headache, or like they can't wear Bluetooth headphones. There's like an extra level of sensitivity. So I can test those things. It's called geopathic stress. It could be from EMF, it can be from high voltage power lines. It can be from some sort of like generator. Like some people live in condos and whatnot. And they have these mechanical rooms like beside their apartment, things like that. These are all things that can create discoherence within the body. I mean, you want to go down a rabbit hole. Anytime there was some sort of electrical revolution, radio waves, satellites, there was all of a sudden some sort of like flu like thing that came out shortly
Yep.
afterwards. We kind of saw the same thing most recently between
Mhm.
5G and COVID, and like certain centers within the world that had these big outbreaks that tend to be technological centers, where these big 5G towers are. So to think, conspiracy theory or not, to think that radiation has no effect on human health is complete BS, in my opinion, and it's valid. Now, going back to the conversation of candida, parasites, heavy metals, everything like that, if we bring it back to the 7 chakras, I've tested so many people and just kind of seen this intuitively. When people resonate in the bottom 3 chakras, fear, shame, and guilt, and self-worth,
And survival.
and survival, fear, yeah,
Yep.
fear, survival,
Mhm.
home, income, that's
Yep.
all, everything down there. When they're in these bottom three, just from an emotional frequency standpoint, they're also going to attract all these bottom dwelling things: candida, fungi, parasites. Like it's going to be within the holobiont of the system. So the microbiome is the bacteria of our gut. Holobiont is this like orb of viruses and microbes that we have like around us, right? Some people call, oh, I love your energy. It's really like, I love your bugs.
Mhm.
One and the same thing.
And in fact, they've done some research that if you leave this room right now, and all of us leave this room, there is special technology that they can bring in, and they could put this here even after 2 hours and know exactly who was sitting in this room, because that's those bugs around that they're trying to like capture.
Yeah, it's our field. It's literally our field that they can find this, right? So when people go through some processes and some work on more of an emotional level and not just a physical level, and get out of those bottom three, get out of the basement and get into their heart chakra, get into love, get into self-love, get into gratitude, that's when you start to see shifts happen with all these things that are in the body, because their resonance is changing, their frequency is changing, the terrain, the bioterrain is changing, so much so that these things don't want to be inside of you. They don't even resonate with you, right? In the idea of structured water, why is structured water so good? Because toxins and stuff aren't supposed to be able to thrive in structured water versus tap water that's in like bended pipes and everything like
Hmm.
that. So the goal is, how do we move our frequency and energy up into the heart chakra and above? How do we get into the top three and out of the bottom three? And when I see that happen, all of a sudden, stubborn candida, heavy metal, all of a sudden these stubborn patterns actually start to change because their frequency has changed. Now, if someone is in a space where they have this stuff in the physical body and they've been meditating or doing a lot of the mental emotional work or done plant medicines, then that's great, because once you start to do the work down here, it doesn't have an energetic root. It's not rooted, and it will leave the body very easily. So with my wife, for example, that was her route. She was in plant medicines, a lot of meditation, a lot of like, soul searching work. And when we started working together, kind of around, we started dating at the same time. Um, Everything that we were working on with her gallbladder and her gut and her hormone issues and her fertility issues, it all started to clear very, very quickly because it didn't have any energetic cords to it. Other people that were in the same position as her, it's much more difficult. It takes much longer because they haven't done any of the other work. All they've done is gone from gut specialist to hormone specialist
Hmm.
to like this 30-day program and that 3-month program and like, the whole social Instagram kind of thing.
Yep. Okay, that is super interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Now, Jason, apart from being a holistic coach and just a fountain of knowledge, you are also a biohacker. And I would be remiss to kind of, and before we started recording, me and Jason, we were just looking at some of the biohacks that I have over here, and we're just seeing how similar we are. So tell me, how does a day in your life go? Tell me about the biohacks, tell me about the supplements, just tell me about your regular day so we can get some curiosity and inspiration into the listeners. I want to know your biohacking routine.
Yeah, so I wake up.
Do you wake
Can't
up with an alarm clock?
Generally not.
Okay.
Luckily, I live in the woods. I have a big, wonderful window in my bedroom, so the sun gets up around like 5:36. Generally, I tend to wake up pretty normally. I haven't done an alarm clock in I don't know how long.
Hmm.
Thank goodness. So no alarm clocks. Like phones on airplane mode. Generally, it's not beside my bed, or if it is, it's in like a RFID pouch.
Hmm.
I wake up. I have some Kangen water, or I pull out my coffee and then I make my bulletproof coffee. I like to stand either on my front deck or my back deck and get some sun. Just like, 5 minutes, even just like sit there, smell the fresh air, get the sunlight in my eyes.
Hmm.
If you guys haven't listened to podcasts by Huberman Lab on like sunlight in your eyes in relation to like chronobiology, you need to do that.
And circadian rhythm.
Circadian rhythm. Blocking out sunlight, sunglasses all the time is not great for your circadian rhythm. And then hormone cycles at
Mhm.
all, right? So that's kind of my morning. Bulletproof coffee. My bulletproof coffee, I have MCT oil, ghee, bees pollen. I put a Myco 10 product. It's a bunch of like immunity mushrooms that I
Okay,
put in
cool.
there.
Well, like a mix of all.
Chaga, lion's mane, just all the
Great.
standard. Honey, and it's like a liter. It's like a super shake in the morning. Like I
Okay.
have that, and then I have my Kangen water with spectrolite. So spectrolite is ionic trace minerals
Mhm.
from Physica, and again, all of the Physica line is designed within like the Fibonacci sequence of the Pythagorean theorem. It's designed within
Sweet.
nature. It's that same math.
Okay, maybe you've lost a few people here. Can you
Okay.
quickly touch up on the Fibonacci sequence and the?
So it's essentially math equations that nature is based on,
Mhm.
right? So there's these ratios, these golden ratios. If there's ratios like in how the human body is designed, our lungs look like that of like a tree. Like there's certain patterns, a seashell.
The
They
flowers, the
exactly. It's just
mountains.
on and on and on, right? Like nature follows a certain sequence. Sacred geometry, right? It's math at the end of the day. And it follows a certain math sequence, Pythagorean's theorem, and the Fibonacci sequence, 1.618.
Yeah, we don't need to do
Right?
that. People can see that on YouTube.
So essentially, there's like this golden ratio of like a seashell, right? And you have this like point right in the middle, and then everything expands in a spiral out from that. So most products out there, they're just like throw a bunch of things in, here are the measurements, and like away you go. Now, Dr. Cass, he creates remedies. We call them remedies because it's just they're that powerful in how they remedy problems. And we have a focal point. You have a focal remedy. And then there's a certain math sequence of the ratios of every other ingredient oscillating, spiraling out from that main point,
Nice.
like a constellation, like a
Interesting.
constellate. And so, because they're designed in that way, our bodies receive this medicine as if it's nature, and it works more profound than anything else. I can have 5 methylated B vitamin products on the table, and the one and with my machine, I can test. By the way, I can test for the resonance of things.
Sweet.
So I can like put something on a plate that's connected to the system while I'm testing you to show you which one of these is going to work the best for you. And it's usually physica, simply because of these math sequences and the resonance of nature. And we are nature, so we receive nature the best.
I always keep telling people that from the atomic to the cosmic, the universe or the cosmic plan is just the same. So instead of always, and this is in another context, but I just remember this now, that I always tell people, like, instead of looking outside for most of the things, try to go within, because what is within you is exactly the same structure which is outside in everything in the entire cosmos. Is just a little bit of more complexity.
We
So
are stardust.
exactly.
That's exactly what we are. We're everything is just a fractal or a differentiation of everything else, right? And the more, yeah, exactly right. The more you can go inwards, like everything we've talked about thus far, for the most part, is going within to do that work on our biofield, on our emotional body, on our mental body, to change what is happening instead of like looking to take this, that, and the next. Now, some cases when for those who don't know, when people are sick, I call their bodies a swamp, right? It's this collection of stagnant energy, this collection of things stuck in the gut, right? The swamp. How do you fix a swamp? You get rid of the beaver dam, you get the water flowing, you get things moving. So to do that, we have to do things that move our energy, exercise, blah, 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 all the things we've talked about already. So going back to how my day starts,
Yep.
right? Kangen water, bulletproof, sunlight, physica remedies, generally whatever protocol that I happen to be on. The last little bit's primarily been like adrenal focused. Every day I have minerals in my water always. Like some people go through phases. Every single liter of water I drink is Kangen with spectrolite. Always. It's like a non-negotiable. My body almost doesn't like it if it's like that. When I travel sometimes and I don't have it and I'm drinking bottled water, it's almost like I do water fast.
Yeah.
Almost.
Is it flavored? This
Spectrolite, it's not flavored. No.
Okay.
Funny enough, if you're dehydrated, it will taste salty,
Mhm.
and if you're not dehydrated, it actually tastes sweet.
Okay.
So when I've traveled to the Caribbean and whatnot, on day like 6 or 7, after like a couple days in the sun, I'm like, ooh, that's salty, and it's because I'm getting dehydrated. So then you think, oh, I just got to pound more water,
Mhm.
basically. After that, like if we think about going to my clinic, for example, on a random day, I could be in the cold plunge, I could be in the sauna. In our house, actually, we have a sauna. We have a bioalchemist mat, so negative ion mat. Above that, we have our red light panel, and then we have the brain tap. So very often,
Sweet.
me and my wife will use that 20 minutes before bed. Our red light's on a 20-minute cycle, so we'll lay on that for 20 minutes, red light, brain tap, and like it's a struggle to get to bed because you are so relaxed, you just want to sleep right there. And every given day, like I have another device that's called a Light. So it's cranium, it's basic photobiomodulation for the cranium, and PMF. I have an amp coil, which is also PMF. So, and in the clinic, we have a BioCharger. You know what a BioCharger is?
Yes.
So
One of my favorite things.
So I have basically the BioCharger is free for anyone to use when they come in the clinic and they're waiting. It's in our waiting area, and like I have this health library on our bookshelf. And so people, if they're waiting for an appointment or they're hanging out, like they read. So I would, to be honest, I haven't been doing as much lately as I want to, but there was a long time where like I'd wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, I have my remedies, I have my my sunlight, and I read for half an hour beside the BioCharger.
What program do you put on the BioCharger while you're reading, or is someone who comes in and who's waiting?
Generally, I put on like a demo program. Sometimes I put on, there's like a light body program that I'll put on.
Don't people get scared? Because that BioCharger can be quite intimidating, especially if you have the antenna on.
I take the antenna out.
Okay, great.
Only because, so for those who don't know, there's like there's a metal rod that you can put in the top, and it emits electricity, and you can hear the electricity.
You can see it as well.
Well, you see it, but you can hear it, and basically that's the sound therapy action of it, right? You're basically hearing the sound, or you're hearing the frequency that is being emitted through like the photonic energy. Like you're seeing and feeling the same thing. And in a clinic, it's loud. It's loud to have that all the time, and it gets annoying. So I put it just for demonstration purposes.
And for people who are listening, imagine this as one of those Avenger movies.
Yeah.
Like imagine if
Star Trek.
Yeah, like if someone had to go steal something from Thor's kingdom, and this had like a lot of power. Like this,
Yeah.
this is something like this. It literally looks like that. So
It's
when people see
basically,
it
it's
first,
a Tesla coil. It's a Tesla coil with noble gases surrounding it and a lightning rod in the top of it.
yeah, and it looks like it's pulling electricity from Thor's hammer.
Exactly. And so when you sit around it, you can feel the frequency of what's coming out of it. So what's the coolest is when I work with my clients, and say we test their nervous system through the brain tap HRV. We look at their light body using the GDV camera, gas discharge visualization. We look at their blood via live blood analysis. I do my background is strength and conditioning, as you know, and manual therapy. So I'll do like a postural and biomechanical analysis on them, and then we test their bioterrain. So in the end, it's like, we took all of these assessments, and we can be like, okay, here's how you need to be eating to support your microbiome right now. Here are the remedies you need to create coherence within your meridians right now. Here are any detox strategies or lifestyle strategies you need to do. Now I need you to come into the clinic so we can use frequency medicine, the BioCharger, and the amp coil to go after the viral patterns or the fungal patterns or anything like that. Have you heard of Rife frequencies before? So these aren't Rife machines, but they work on a similar framework. And so when we're hitting it from like a nutritional, herbal, or homeopathic level, and you're eating in a way that supports it, and you're doing the lifestyle stuff, you're starting to move the system in a direction. And it's through the coaching of our clinic, of our community, of the practitioner, to get that client to start to see it is much deeper than taking this and doing that.
Amazing.
It's the coaching of like, how do we move your emotional body up in a direction? And when they get stuck, that's when we run our retreats, or we work with, my wife serves plant medicines. We work with individuals to move into a plant medicine space to guide them over that bridge that they're stuck with.
Interesting. Okay, so you've spoken about your day, probably the afternoon, and then what do you do in the evening?
In the evening is the biomat red light. Like that's my evening. I come home. There's my dog. I have a 150-pound cane corso. His name
Yeah,
is,
you've got to show me the picture.
Yeah, I will. He's a 150-pound cane corso, and every day I come home, he doesn't play with his bone all day. As soon as I get home, a bone's in his mouth. He's at the top of the staircase, and he's just waiting to say hello. He sticks his hand out to me, and that's my evening greeting every day. Erin's usually with Ayla somewhere. Like I usually get home kind of around bedtime, so she's going to bed. And then usually I will like get my evening remedies out, make some food, and kind of decompress after my day, which is like an hour to an hour and a half. And if I'm being good, I will get on to my mat and relax. There have been times where not so good, and I kind of just go straight to bed because I'm so tired.
Do you have anything else that you do for sleep? Because a lot of people in this part of the world have A, they're sleep deprived, B, they're always struggling. Any tips for those guys?
Now, would you say that is because of work or societal pressure, or why would like, or is it
all
just
of it together?
all of it together?
Yeah, because we also live in a city that is more active during the nighttime. So there's EMFs, in my opinion, EMFs. There's a lot of blue light. There is a lot of work-life balance might be a bit off, so people might be bringing in a lot of stress from work. So it's a mix of everything, and then just thinking about being in those lower survival chakras.
Yeah, totally.
So
so I would say magnesium is your first bet.
Mhm.
Like if you aren't taking magnesium, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're trying to get
What
sleep.
kind of magnesium is your favorite?
My favorite is BioOptimizers. Have you
Okay.
heard of BioOptimizers?
Yes.
So BioOptimizers,
The mag breakthrough.
yes.
Yeah.
So Erin, my wife, during pregnancy, we're using some other like magnesium biglycinate,
Mhm.
and she was getting like restless leg. Restless leg is low magnesium, and BioOptimizers magnesium was the only magnesium that really calmed it down. So
Cool.
it's definitely really high quality. I was taking it myself and really felt a difference. I mean, they have 10 different chelates of magnesium.
Mhm.
Like you cannot go wrong with that. And I did their recommended loading phase, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, magnesium is a core mineral,
Yep.
and
And most of us are missing
and
it.
cortisol depletes it. And our soil is so deficient in minerals that we're not even getting out of our food anymore. So it's a must because our stress is at an all-time high. Our mineral load is at an all-time low. Like it's just a recipe waiting for disaster.
You know what's one other thing that magnesium is good for? It's good for blocking EMF. So if you have adequate amount of magnesium in
That
your
I didn't know.
if you have adequate amount of magnesium in your body, in your
Yeah.
system, then chances are it is a calcium channel blocker.
Yeah. So in the morning, I actually take, there's a company in Canada called ATP,
Mhm.
but they create magnesium threonate.
Yeah.
Actually, Symbiotica just got here, and Symbiotica is a company, American company, and they just got to the UAE,
Yeah.
and they have a magnesium threonate product, and I take that in the morning. So I'll take magnesium threonate in the morning, and then I'll take the BioOptimizers blend throughout the day. So I used to
sweet.
just take it at night.
Yeah.
I take magnesium breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Just like me.
I take it every single meal because, like, what am I going to do? Take like 7 at night? Like, I just break it up throughout the day.
Yeah, once this podcast is over, I'll walk you through my supplement closet and we'll go downstairs and see some things as well. And I'll show you.
So magnesium is a great one. Inositol for people that are really high
Inositol.
stress is great. I mean, women with PCOS, it's also great. High quality melatonin. Most melatonin is garbage.
Mhm. Why?
Synthetically derived for the most part.
Mhm.
Physica, I've never really been a fan of melatonin.
Mhm.
And like similar to what you just described, Physica has a melatonin, and I started taking theirs, and it's like night and day difference. So having high quality is key. Now we know melatonin is messed up primarily because of our light cycles. So blue light at night, I see you got red lights up here.
Yeah.
So red lights in certain rooms, or having a lamp that's a red light so you can turn off the blue light at night is key. No blue or white light in the house.
Mhm.
Like any blue light or white light we had in our house, all our pot lights, I had them changed to yellow.
Nice.
Like our whole house is yellow. But at
this
night,
one's yellow.
yeah, but at night, like we turn it all off. Like it all gets off, or I put everything on dimmers. So everything is like super, super low at night. Because we should be around candlelight primarily. My phone, I can show you. My phone I have a grayscale option, and that's primarily.
Okay, so here's the
I don't know if
grayscale.
you can see it. But like basically from like a dopamine perspective and at night. So on the accessibility folder on your phone, you can choose filters and you can reduce the white point. So I do both of those at night. Even during the day, I'll keep my color filter on, because when we're looking at our iPhones, it's so vibrant that life seems less vibrant.
Yep.
And that is a dopamine issue,
Mhm.
right? And now we're just getting this dopamine fix, scrolling. So we need to set up our phone where it doesn't create so much dopamine that we want to be on it all the time. So color filters off, reduce white point off. My laptop, I have something called Flux,
Mhm.
which basically yellows the screen at
Yep.
night.
It's so similar.
And then blue light blockers in the evening with the red lens. I don't
Yeah.
wear blue light blockers during the day. I'm a big believer that you need all light spectrums.
Mhm.
I actually have a pair of glasses called Tesla Hyperlights, and they don't block any specific frequency of light out. They just structure the light coming into your eyes, so they create coherence. I'll send it to
Sweet.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll send it to
sweet.
you. Actually, I think I might have it in my bag. And you get instant difference. Like looking at your laptop, you may be like, oh yeah, it's fine. You put those on and you can actually feel the muscles of your eyes soften.
Mhm.
It's quite incredible. So yeah, that's my night routine: magnesium, inositol, melatonin, blue light, ground. Like to go outside. I got to take my dog outside, get some fresh air. Yeah, like outside, being outside in the evening and like just trying to relax. And I know it might be harder here in the UAE,
Yeah.
but finding a way to ground, I think, is the key. And if you have a difficult time doing that with living in a condo or anything like that, grounding mats,
Mm.
grounding mats, grounding mats, grounding mats.
By the way, me and Jason are our feet are on a grounding mat right
Yeah.
now. You guys can't see it on the camera, but basically, we've plugged in the grounding mat right into the garden downstairs, and we're naturally getting those negative electrons and discharging that electricity. Jason, it has been a fantastic episode, fantastic time talking to you. I think we can go on for hours
I
and
think
hours,
so.
but right after this, we're jumping into a biohacking meetup that we have. So, Jason, I need you to save some energy because you've got to do a small presentation there.
Perfect. Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on to this show.
Thank you.
One of my last questions to you is, if, let's say, we had a time machine and we could rewind time,
Mhm.
and you can go back to your younger self and give yourself one or two pieces of advice, what would that be? I mean, of course, you're going to tell yourself to buy Bitcoin, but apart from that, what else would it be?
Crypto. Oh, I would probably go back to when. That is a great question. Great question. I'd probably go back to when I was 7. When I was 7, I moved to a new school, and it was primarily a white dominated school or white area. Um, and it's funny because there was a black kid, there was an Indian kid, but they were there the whole time. So I was the new kid with last name Persaud, skinny, brown, and a couple kids picked on me. And that really like ingrained this like you're not good enough, you don't fit in, like so on and so forth. And I think if I went back and was just like an older brother to like my younger self and like really told him that everything's going to be okay and like to not hold on to that, um things would have changed. But at the same time, it was that exact path that led me into
Got you
bodybuilding
here, yeah.
and got me here, because if I didn't get sick, I wouldn't be here. I literally would not be sitting with you right now.
Mm.
So I'm eternally grateful for my path and my soul journey and contract. And I know that Yasmin, this event, like I was called here for a reason, um, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. But I would also like to highlight, if someone is going through something like this, and you're listening to this podcast, or someone, your son or you know your brother going through this, then just make sure that you go up to them and be with them, and just make sure you let them know that in the grand scheme of things, all of these things don't matter, and you need to sort of not teach them how to be resilient, but also just teach them that, like all situations in life, where always things are always moving up and down, so this time will pass. And like Jason said, don't hold on to things accumulate. Even if there are some things, sometimes when we hold on to things, we know that we're piling up a lot of things, but their emotions, there are other sorts of energies that we can hold on to, but we cannot see it. So make sure you don't hold on to anything. Live life, enjoy life, just be happy, just be smiling, and just have curiosity. That's it. And Jason, thank you so much for joining us. What is the best way for people to grab you or grab
Yeah.
your attention?
Website jasonpersaud.ca, super easy. Instagram jasonpersaud.bioenergetics.
Cool. We'll tag his profile in so you guys can know. And Jason, thank you so much once again. This has been a fantastic time. And this is me, CJ, signing out from the Shift with CJ podcast. Everyone, have a great day, have a great week, have a great month, have a great lifetime. See you soon.